Thanks for coming out tonight to the October meeting of the Upper Salford Historical Society. The gang running it does an awesome job with putting together the series of speakers and events. And tonight, it's my pleasure to introduce John Smith to give the history on his spectacular Christmas light display, which has been awe-inspiring for many years. Thanks for being here, John.
Nothing like putting myself in where my foot's going to be.
Alrighty, I got notes. I hope no one minds. How you doing tonight?
Good.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Well, I guess the best way to start this out is I had no idea what I was going to do tonight. I was like thinking, they're blow molds. They're plastic. They're electric. You put a light bulb in and you put them out. I guess that's really simple until you get about 1,500 of them, which is the current count. Just so you know, last year's display had over 1,200 of them in. So we have got a lot going on out there. I don't know much what you know about it, but I'm going to give you some of the brief history and some of the craziness of all this down here. But the Encyclopedia Britannica defines plastic as a polymeric material that has the capability of being molded or shaped, usually by the application of heat and pressure. Well, that's how all this stuff starts. It starts as a very large test tube looking creature, and it just what it says, blow molds into a mold. They're a grease mold. They were started back in the 1920s and 30s, and they really gained popularity after World War II and into the 60s. In the 1960s, there were 6 major makers of these products, and that was Polaron, and they were out in New York. Empire and Union were the 2 biggest makers. Most of these pieces are Empire or Union. Noma, everyone knows Noma. Whether you know Noma or not, they're the ones that made the candles that went in everyone's windows. You can always remember Noma by that. Bico, which is out of Chicago, and Tico, and there have been many others around, but they were the biggest ones around. They gained a lot of popularity up through the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Everyone had them. You can go anywhere, and anyone had them. Unfortunately, by the 90s, with the advent of downsizing and smaller houses and smaller postage stamp yards, people didn't want this stuff anymore. Stores didn't want this stuff anymore. You can't put this away. It takes up too much room. You have 20 of these and you lose a whole area. So they just decided they didn't want to deal with this anymore. So slowly but slowly, by the year 2000, all the companies that made these were gone. The last of the companies closed in November of 26, and that was Union Plastics. They have warehouses that are still packed full of these things. They were huge molds, heat-injected plastic into them. They were covered in oil, and they sit on shelves. No one wants them. No one wants to clean them up. No one, because you have to clean all the wax off them, then you have to airbrush them. You got to do the whole 9 yards. No one wants to go through that work now. Every now and then, one of the warehouses will open up and sell a couple hundred pieces for X amount of dollar, and they'll hit the market again. And then when they hit the market out here, it's a nightmare. I mean, around this place, it's a collectible thing. Unfortunately, you go out to the Midwest, and they're laying along the road free. And I'm like, I would love to take a trip out there. Oh, boy. They're plastic. The plastic in this area and these products, I was talking earlier that light bulbs kill these products. And that was the downfall of a lot of these products, especially when Mr. and Mrs. Jones have this nice piece, and it would look so nice with a 100-watt light bulb in it when it says no more than 40 watts. So it degrades them from the outside or inside. Sun degrades them from the outside. The paint disappears. They dry up. You drop them. So out here, everyone looks at these things as a collector's piece, and it's like my thing is I'll go to shows. There's actually auctions. There's websites. There's Blow Mold Nation, which is a Facebook website, and they've got all these things you can look into. And people tell you, oh, look what I picked up in the trash today. I'm like, 45 years, and I found one piece in the trash. Wow. And that was over in Percy, and I just happened to be going over there because I inherited a house over there. It's like, that's mine! Never find it, but yet there will be people that send in pictures to Blow Mold Nation. Oh, I stopped at a yard sale and gave the lady $10 for all this. I'm like,
Wow.
I can't imagine, because a going rate on this guy in a little bit better shape is going to be about $500, $600. New, he probably cost about $25.
Right.
And my thing with a lot of people is like, my display works for a living. I don't collect this stuff to sit around and catch money. I collect this stuff to use, and it works for its job. It works for its living, and it runs the risk of me dropping something on it, someone running off with it. Thievery is always a big issue, and a million other things. So it's like, I want it because you can't find it anymore, and B, because I want it in my display. And it started out, it literally started out probably about 1981 with the biggest part of what is now the display when I was working at a whopping $3.35 an hour at Family Heritage. And I was making money, and I was like happy, and it's like I picked up the old Sears catalog, the one that's like this thick that you can use for everything, and they had a nativity set in it. Oh, I was wanting a nativity set. They had a sleigh and reindeer in it. It's like, oh, and bonus reindeer, I gotta have that. so I got those two pieces. I roamed over to Care and Share, which at that end was in the old Grants end of the shopping center, and got a couple candles for the front yard from Noma for outdoor candles. And I got a snowman at Jamesway for $10. I was like, I had it going then, and I just went from that point. My father hated it. If anyone knew my father, they knew how much of a pain in the butt he could be, and he hated it. And I kid you not, it would be, and I waited for it every year. Because I used to do the entire house, inside and out. Walls, doors, lights, bathroom. Nothing better than a Santa Claus that talks to you while you're going to the bathroom. We had it all. Every room had a tree in it. And I kid you not, the day after Christmas, every year, it's about time you take some of this shit down. I'm like, give me a chance. And he was just that crass and that rude of stuff. But you know what? I got this from his mother, my grandmother. My grandmother had one of those old tinsel-esque Christmas trees, the type that when you got too close to it, with anything warm, it melted immediately.
Right.
And she would have lights on it, and there would be lights melted to the light bulbs. And she loved her Christmas decorations. And when she lived with us, she loved it too. And for some reason, when she moved out, I conveniently inherited all that. Actually, it was supposed to go to the trash, but I conveniently inherited it. So that was the start of the lights. We always did lights as a kid. We always had lights out. We always had something going out. But it wasn't until I got out of school that the light endeavor took off. And, oh, you know what? I forgot all about that. Give me 10 seconds. Late 90s.
Yeah.
This sign hung in the front yard. And at that time, if you were looking at the house, we only had lights in the upper half. Because the other half, how do I put lights over there? I had no electricity. I was stupid then. And I considered 50 displays. That was a lot of pieces. And I figured, I had 50 displays. And the display was one of these surround roof light up candy canes or something like that, and lights. My God, do I have lights down there? And unfortunately, that was heavy.
Got your exercise for the day.
Yes. Didn't seem to take that much breath to put it in. But it was just there, and it served its purpose. When I look back on that, I'm thinking, that's nothing, because it had 50 pieces or displays. Literally, it's over 1,500 now, and that's 40 years later.
Wow.
But I just liked it. I saw it in the basement, stuck between the washers. I'm like, oh, good. I'll drag that up here just for hoo-hoos and gagas.
Yeah.
When do you start putting your lights out?
The lights, I started already, but not to the extent of putting them out. Usually this time of year, October, involves trimming the trees. Like the weeping willow gets trimmed to this level just so it's under my eyes so I don't get poked in, or above my eyes so I don't get poked in the eyes. Shrubbery gets cut back, the yard gets readied up, everything slowly starts to come out. Immediately after Halloween, everything comes out. The stakes will go up, things will start flying, start moving 1,500 pieces out of the back shed. Start wiring everything. Everything goes through a system of wires, of checking and balancing, determining, who's going out this year because it works, who's getting repaired this year, who's probably going to get repaired this year, and oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do with you, type of thing. This is one of them from last year. Poor Snoopy. But he has a big nose. Big, solid nose. Wide, but he literally just fell face forward, and that was the end of Snoopy last year. But we'll get to him in a little bit, because I've got plans for him.
John.
Yes?
Did you have to build another building just to store these?
I put it about 20 years ago. I put up a 21 by 32 foot building to put them in the back.
Wow, cool.
So that's where, ideally, half of it was for them, and half of it was for all my other assorted things. Now it's slowly growing everywhere. I've determined that over the years, steel does actually shrink, because the building keeps getting smaller, and the stuff keeps getting more up there. So I don't know what's going on with that, but I've got stuff from rafters. I've got stuff
Wow.
Anything that stands upright, i.e. like candles, light posts, there's well over 500 of them, and they're just, it looks like a bad batch of, I don't know, pipe sticking in the yard.
So they hang off the walls inside the building?
They are, storing them away is a problem. The display started out, I'll get to that one in a second with how that works. The display started out as just lights. Then it went to blow molds and lights. Then it went to blow molds, lights, and the wireframe stuff. So when you looked at the house, one side was modern with the wires and the wireframe stuff. This side was blow molds and more traditional. I went more traditional. Anyway, so they were doing a job, and they're a pain in the butt. Especially when you've got a couple hundred of them. There's just no way to protect them every year. They bang against each other. You're sitting there spending an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours looking for one light bulb that doesn't work. I slowly filtered them out as of last year. I don't think I have but maybe 5 or 6 of them left. There was the advent of the inflatables, which they were the coolest thing. They take a lot of juice, they take a lot of electricity, and they're easily stolen.
Oh, wow.
And those were the main pieces I've had stolen over the years. I had nutcrackers, I've had snowmen, I've had Christmas trees, I've had all the inflatable stuff stolen. And it's like, what do you do about it? And it happens. It's like, let's see, we've got, $100,000 worth of plastic stuff sitting in the front yard that someone walked off with. But, so over time, I've weeded out most everything we have, and all we have are blow molds. And lots of lights. But we have blow molds. And there is a neat Jenga game of blow molds in my back shed, where they all sort of pile into each other. I know who can go where, I know who can't go where, I know who's got to be put away safe, that you don't have more of this happen, so you don't end up with that as what's left of it.
Oh, God.
Because that's another bane of their existence, is people and clear tape. Most everything I get is reclaimed. There is the inflatable people, which mostly centers around Jemmy, are making blow molds again. They just don't seem as durable as these do. I mean, when you consider that one, this one, and this one are from 1978.
Wow.
They've aged much better than I have. And they fade out, and that's another downfall of what goes on with them. But they do hold up well as long as you take care of them. And some of them don't. Things like the Snoopy here, his face gets elongated out here, and this gets thinner, and it sits out in the sun more, and it just becomes brittle as anything. So that's part of another point of how we take care of things like this.
So another question for you, as far as the lights go, now that they're out with LEDs that use a lot less electricity, are you converting them to those?
I have, at this point, within the last 5 years, about 95% of everything is LED.
Good.
Because depending on the LED and what it is, I can get anywhere from 10 to 20 extra, like that's an incandescent. That's, I'm going to say that's a 60-watt bulb in that one. And that's the way they should look, bright and happy and nice and new. And he's from 1978 too, and sometimes they'll hold up and sometimes they'll look like this. Just depends where he goes. But for that one incandescent bulb, I can get anywhere from 10 to 20 more pieces out. So unfortunately, with the addition of last year's 600 pieces, the light bill hasn't changed much because I've just added more stuff. So using less electricity, but the same amount of electricity somehow. So Pico loves me, you know, it's like, it's the beacon on the hill. When I was a kid, probably about 30 years ago, I used to drive around. I would go all the way down to the ski slope and look for that glowing top, and through the trees, I'd go over to the Bay Pony Inn and look for the glowing spot on the ground. You can see it a long distance away. For most people, they know me as the crazy Christmas light guy, or that's where Santa lives, or that's where Christmas lives. My sister-in-law came to me the other day and said something to the same effect, that she was at an appointment with her granddaughter, and the woman said that her kids love to go there because that's where Santa lives. Like, keep telling me that. Keep making me have to do this.
Yeah, right.
Let's see. Yeah, bathroom everywhere there was lights. Christmas Jenga. Okay, yep, well, we're going to go through a couple of the ideas of why it's so deadly around here with these things. The sun, the rain, the temperature changes, just general packing away of this stuff is very, very detrimental to these products. And for some reason, you can look around, you can find them. Every now and then I'll find them at a yard sale for insignificant amount of money, like $10, $5, $20. But most times I have a gentleman that comes from, he does storage lockers. He clears out storage lockers. And last year, he was clearing out a lot on Long Island up in New York. And he was just bringing truckloads of pieces back. Last year I added almost 600 pieces to the display. Unfortunately, he would bring back the stuff, and I wanted those 3 pieces, but I had to take the stuff. Like, how many Santa Clauses do I need? But unfortunately, that's how you get it around here. And he's pretty good at the prices, but I've looked around and I've gone to places, and like I said, seeing this for sale somewhere for $500 is not, uncommon, and I just think that's crazy. I really, but like I said, it depends on your area. In this area, we have the rain, we have the snow, we have the cold, we have the ice, and you have idiots that set stuff up and drop them on their face. Last year, I was working on the nativity scene, and I had the choir girls, the choir boys and the choir girls there. And I don't remember what I did, but I'm looking, I must have been moving a stone. All I remember is I moved something, and I dropped it right on top of it, and I watched his head go straight to his body, right to the ground. And I was like, well, at least the head's still in good shape. But he wasn't going to be around. So slowly, every year, more gets damaged, I add more. So that's the reason we just keep things coming around here. As much as there is a lot of possibility of damage to these things, giving them new life isn't necessarily the hardest thing around. It's just time consuming. This guy is up for a paint job. He will, when he's done, he will look like this one again. Nice and bright and happy. Now you might say painting's a great idea. Painting sucks. Because I had gotten a set of, I got Melchior, Balthazar, and Gaspar, the three wise men, and they were bleached white. I'm like, so I can paint them. Why not? So I painted them all up nice and happy and new, and I went and plugged them in, and they look like mummies in Technicolor. Because every brush stroke, every dot, I'm like,
That's funny.
crap. But going along with that same idea, I do medieval reenactment. And just to deviate a little bit, we have a 5-foot rule. A 5-foot rule is when someone's standing in front of you, you better be authentic. You better have hand-sewed clothing, garb, hand-sewed buttons. Everything has to be accurate. 10 feet, you're pushing towards show. You know, it's like no one really cares. 20 feet, all bets are off. I don't care if you're wearing polyester. And I thought, well, you know what? The wise men are going to be all the way up in the front yard. No one's going to notice at 50 feet. No one notices at 50 feet. No one notices that the colors aren't right. I have the bros down here on your sort of neighbors, Nona and Aixa and all that. I have a 6-foot Polaron Santa Claus from 1958 that is almost bleached completely white. And they just say, don't ever paint him. I'm forbidden to paint him because they like the way he looks, because it reminds them of an old-fashioned Christmas. And that was basically, if you look at the Lights in Salfordville webpage, that's basically my goal, is to create an old-fashioned Christmas. A little bit extreme, but an old-fashioned Christmas nonetheless. Because this is what we all remember as an old-fashioned Christmas, not these projected snowflakes and not the music in your car that goes dum 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 dum, you know, or anything. It's just all this stuff. Everyone said, oh, Grandma had one of those. Or I wonder whatever happened to Aunt Nancy's this, that, and the other thing. I probably have it now, but chances are I do. I've picked through a lot in this area. I've gone to lots of places, and I just try to find what I can and repurpose it. Snoopy, you know, along with the repairs of using airbrushing, not painting. This one here was painted, which I thought was going to turn out to be more of an example. This one I got this year. This one and that one I got currently this year. This one I bought up because from a distance, she looks almost all right. It looks almost all right. Someone decided to take a paintbrush and give them nice cheeks and paint in the spots here, and paint a spot here, and paint some gloves here, and paint some boots there. Well, that's fine and dandy until you plug it in, and you almost realize that you don't know where the cord is. And it doesn't really show as much as I thought it would, but it's one of those things that's like, I know it's there. And I can't work electricity to save my life tonight. But you end up with blotchiness.
Right.
So imagine something completely white that you took all the time to paint all the brush strokes in to get flesh tones and, you know, stuff to look like velvet, and it looks like a mummy, and that a Technicolor mummy. People are it boggles my mind how people put these in their front yard and how they keep them there. I have a snowman at home. He's probably, about this big around on the bottom. Big, he's about this tall. Found them, someone bought him to me. He must have weighed 100 pounds. I'm like, how in the world did they, they'll fill them with sand, they'll fill them with bricks. I finally got tired of moving this thing, and I opened it up, and it was full of batteries that you would use on, like, kiddie cars and mowers. I'm like, what? I guess, first of all, that's how he's going to get rid of his batteries. Let's get rid of them by doing that. I was like, there must be at least 25 of these batteries in the bottom of this thing. Didn't blow anywhere, but it's like tape. People will tape stuff on them, and that's one of Snoopy's problems. He's been clear taped to death. And at some point, someone had taped this to something. And I don't understand, and it truly is my own amazement that people can't figure out how to put these in their yard. I mean, everyone asks me, how do you keep this stuff from blowing away? Lots of practice. I used to find stuff down at the intersection, over at NW's Lodge. You know, the wind goes, and that's the other thing. The wind generally goes this way, and the tree break usually cuts it down. But the further down the yard you get, the more it gets the wind, and things just go sailing. And I put this, and I watch these people. It's like, how do you do this? And how do you? And they're talking about putting this in and tying this down and putting screw eyes in the heads and tying them down to strings. I have no problem. I just have 1,500 stakes sticking in the front yard.
Right, yeah.
I put a stake in, drop them over it. They don't go anywhere. Sometimes I used to put a stake in and then put a screw in through the top, and it's like, that's ridiculous. But the stakes keep them in place. Every now and then you look in the front yard and everywhere they're leaning this way after a nice windstorm, but no one goes anywhere. I don't have the choir boys' heads blowing away, and I don't have candle tops missing. But no one seems to get on to the idea. I guess it's also the fact that you've got to handle all the stakes that go with it, which would take us to another interesting story on blood and guts eventually on this thing. But putting them out has worked the best way with that. I can put them almost anywhere. I have no problem with them. They stay where they go, and I don't have to worry about. Unless, of course, I'm stupid and put the stake in too high, and I drop it on there, and the stake pops itself to the top, and I just stand there and look at it, and I'm like, well, that's a darn. So I've had that happen on numerous snowmen in my life. I thought that was a little shorter than that.
John, what kind of paint do you use?
Waterproof craft paint. Any of the I pick it up at Walmart. Anything that I can feed through an airbrush, because the airbrush is your best friend. I failed to get into that. I have a tendency of derailing quickly anymore. But everything goes into an airbrush, and I can spray it out. Depending on the thickness of it, I can water it down. As long as it's waterproof craft paint, it'll stay on.
And tape it though,
what's that?
when you're
I
spraying
take this thing on.
Tape it off.
Yep, tape it off just like you were masking out a car or anything else you were going to do a project on. And you do a section at a time. And I was looking, see, like this one, this is simple because it's red. I mean, red and black, you don't have a lot to worry about. But when you get into this, all the toys were supposed to be a different color. I'm like, yeah. So he goes into the pile. We'll get to him sooner or later.
So let me ask you a question about the repainting of them.
Sure.
Well, like when you've acquired them, they aren't all new when you acquired them.
No.
And so, like, as far as, I know you said that for you they're more of a useful item than a collector's item, but if you were going to go to resell them, does repainting them affect the value?
No, because some people want the look like that for collecting purposes, but if they're actually going to use it, this is going to be the dumbest story, but I'll tell it anyway. I had a stroke this year in April, and part of my thing was everyone pushed me to get all my affairs in order just in case things went crazy. And I made sure that in my will, these can't go to a collector that doesn't actually use them. Because I want them used, because that's what they're for. I don't want someone to have a museum full of plasticware that, just sits there. I want the stuff used, and that as stupid as it sounds, that's what it's all about. I mean, the fact that it went from the 60s to the 90s and then no one wanted it anymore. And now they want them again. And Jemmy, the company that did the inflatables, is doing blow molds again. Walmart has a good deal of them, but unfortunately they're as many neat ones as not Walmart, Home Depot has now. They're not functional for what I do. They're really cool, but they're all wired with LEDs, like they're in the eyes and like his buttons. So there's like maybe 10 little lights on them, but they're still blow molds. I mean, what good is that? I mean, no one can even see if it's on. So it's like, will I take them? Sure, I'll take them. Will I buy them? No. Will I buy them after Christmas if they're still around at a quarter of the price? Sure I will, because they literally have to be gutted. You literally have to pull everything out. And last Christmas, trying to find the replacement light fixtures was a nightmare. Everything literally was stuck in the Suez Canal coming from China.
Oh boy.
You couldn't. What I paid, the little type of light, the C7 bulbs. What I paid $4.99 for the year before was going for $15.99 last year.
Wow.
Because there's none in the site. These type of light bulbs in these settings were going upwards of $29.95 each. And they were $10.99 and $15.99 the year before. Can't get them. So smartly, whenever I go to yard sales or flea markets or thrift stores, I look for anything that I can bastardize into a light, because it's getting harder and harder. And as they've gotten newer, they've gotten harder and harder and harder. Because this guy's got a new light in him. This one still has the original, the unpolarized, nice, happy cord. He's got the advent of fuses. I'm like, why do we have to add a fuse to something?
So do you have a favorite one? And the other question would be, when you put them out, do you put them out in order of how much you like them? In other words, your favorites down to the ones you like less?
Well, what's in the front yard, in front of the house, are 9 times out of 10 my favorites.
Okay.
Do I have a favorite? I have what any collector has, they call it the Holy Grails.
Okay.
They're the things that you'll never find. They're the pieces that, it took me forever to find one of these in really good shape, because I ended up going down Schweinsville Road, down at Davies' house down there. They had a kids' Little Tykes Playhouse out. And one of the things I want to do more than anything is create a Christmas village of Little Tykes Playhouses, where I could have Grandma Claus in there with a little toy oven baking cookies. I could have Mr. and Mrs. Claus in the front door waving. So I finally found a set. I found a pair of these, and they were much, much better than this one. But it's just helping that little dream come true of getting that little Christmas village done. Because I'm going to put elves and the toy workshop and the whole 9 yards and get them all together. So yes, the favorite ones usually have prominence in the yard. They're basically everything is centered around the main nativity and then builds out from there. But everything runs in rows. The rows keep getting tighter and tighter every year. You used to be able to look down everything in diagonals from one corner of the house to the other, and now the rows everything's getting closer and closer. Everything used to be 5 foot apart, 10 foot apart. Now everything's 5 foot apart, maybe 5 foot apart, and now it's just getting tighter and tighter and tighter. So if there's something I really like a lot, it stays closer to the house too, because I'm afraid of it getting stolen. And it's just the nature of the beast. With thievery, through time, thievery has usually been the blow molds, and the worst point of stuff stolen was baby Jesus. Because I don't understand it, and I don't get it. And I've seen it posted on the pages where people take pictures of baby Jesus at a party, and it's like, but that's usually what disappears. And they are getting harder and harder to find too. Because I have pieces for nativity sets I've been trying to give away. I can't even give them away. But the one thing that people always say, do you have any Jesuses? Then for some reason, Jesus is the first thing to disappear. Mary is the first one to get broken. And there's a million shepherds. So I don't get it. But I've had wise men stolen. I've had inflatables stolen. I've had odds and end pieces stolen. But there is a flip side to that. I will come home and find piles of stuff laying in my front yard. So it never really amounts to the same thing, but at least someone's thinking, get rid of that old crank's house. So that's a good sign of it all.
So do you have a breakdown of how many Santa Clauses, how many deer, how many
My deer are slowly fading. I actually have I have a set from one of my collectors, one of the guys that the same guy that does the storage lockers. He's got a set of reindeers. My reindeers are part of my original set, which was from 1981, 82, and some of them from the early 60s. And they're sort of like all moshed together, but they're fading out, and they're getting crinkly and breaky and broken. So, you know, unfortunately, it is what it is. I used to keep track of how many Santa Clauses, how many, because it's Santa Clauses and snowmen are the big lot up there. Mm-hmm. And last year when Angel bought me all this stuff, it's like, I am tired of counting. One of these days, because I sit there and I get everything in the ground and I start counting, and after 1,000, you start losing count. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so anyway, when you're cleaning them up and you're fixing them up, the glue and the paint and all those other issues, you get them out of the way. And last year I found a new way of fixing these things, which is proving itself on the small pieces to work out really good, and that is soda bottles and milk jugs, and a heat gun. Because you can literally mold it right around to it. So I'm working on this guy right now, so when I get this one finished, good old Snoopy will have a round nose again.
That's pretty creative.
And what's going to happen to this was a milk jug. It's a little roughed out. I'm going to sand it down a little, and I'm going to heat it up over a bowling ball.
There you go.
And then I will put him back on there, and at 20 feet, no one's going to be able to tell.
Yeah.
I'll just put his nose back on him. And at 20 feet, no one will be able to tell that we're Snoopy.
And the thickness is probably close to the same, isn't it?
What's that?
The thickness of it.
The thickness is not that far off because, like I said,
cool.
the nose was
Pretty thin.
pretty thin to begin with. But working on that big of a scale, like I have pieces that it's usually the smaller pieces that have slim legging and or bottoms on. Like I can slide it right into a milk jug, just turn the heater on and just shrink right around it.
Yeah.
And it'll be fine. Where this is a big, gaping hole.
Yeah. Just don't set yourself on fire.
Exactly.
Yeah. John, you can save yourself some trouble. That looks like a COVID mask.
That's
Good
funny.
thinking. That'll work. Yeah. I do have his nose at home too. But,
That was a good one.
yeah, that'll work. So heat guns are really, it's especially for a lot of littler pieces. And I found something else actually the year before, that added life to a lot of these things. Because a lot of times you'll start out with spider cracks, the little things, and Flex Seal, the clear spray Flex Seal will add a little bit of durability to it so that you don't end up having pieces that just chip off. It'll give them some life. So every year, there's certain ones that I get out. I inspect those if they need another shot of Flex Seal. It's clear. It helps hold them together, and it gives them a little bit of life. And inevitably, I'll drop something on it anyway, so it doesn't matter. Like I said, we've been doing the main part of the display for 83, so it's more than 40 years. And in all those times, there's been a lot of accidents.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, you have to take the good and the bad. There was one time, if anyone remembers back when I did more lights and displays, there used to be lights that went around the house that chased each other. Mm-hmm. And I can remember we put those up, and in the second year we went to put them up, and I'm climbing up from the first level up to the second level, and I don't know how, and I just went right back down. And I'm sitting there hanging off the first level like this.
Oh,
and all I could think of is, this is Dad's new gutter system.
That's funny.
He's all I can think of is he's going to kick my how'd that go?
That's funny.
I went crashing to the ground. That was probably the start of my knee problems. But I never got up on the roof again, unfortunately. So we stopped at the second floor. I would love to do the second floor, but I don't. A couple years back, maybe about 10 years ago, I've always had a pickup truck since 1995. And for anyone who has an older car, You know how to drive an older car. You open the door, you look out, you look over your shoulder, you look everywhere you go. So I was backing down the driveway in my pickup truck, and I have the door open, and I'm looking out the door, and I'm backing down the driveway, and all of a sudden all this racket's going on. I'm pulling all the lights
Oh,
down the street.
Oh, my.
Well, we're not putting lights in those trees again.
Oh, that's funny. You live and learn.
The 10-pound cannonball. That's always my favorite story. Years ago, when I started doing all these stakes. Now, if you think about it, some of these stakes are very large stakes, and it takes a lot to pound them in. And using a hammer, a big sledgehammer, just wasn't cutting it anymore. So I'll get a stake pounder. Of course, go to Home Depot, not Home Depot, Tractor Supply, and ask the kid, where do I find a stake pounder? And they go, it's probably over in the cooking section. No! Post hole driver, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I got one there, and I never liked it to begin with. It just never seemed right. And I don't know if anyone's really familiar how they make post hole drivers, but they have a piece of steel, and they have a plug of steel. They heat them both up, put them together, quench them, and then they weld them, and that's what happens.
Right.
Well, I never paid attention, or I didn't want to pay no attention to the fact that the weld wasn't quite right. So I'm down there, this is right down at the corner of the road, right between the properties, and I'm pounding away, and boom, wham, wham. I pounded down, the 10-pound slug came flying out the top, went up into the air, came down, hit me in the head, hit my lip, broke open my lip, cracked my tooth.
You're kidding.
I'm standing there like, wow.
Didn't know your own strength.
Well, the worst part of that is there is practically, in all my life, nothing more excruciating than having needles stuck into your split lips to numb them. And I can't just let it go. No, it's your lip. You're just going to have it. So that every time I think of that, it's just like, ooh.
Oh, boy.
2 years ago, I wired the entire yard up with COVID because it needed to get done, and I had COVID. And guess what? Yeah, that was 2020. I did that all. I had 2 weeks off from work. At that point, it was a month off from work. So I would go out and wire for 2 hours and come in out of breath and sit down, get my strength back up, go out and wire for 2 more hours.
No.
Deers and rabbits are our worst enemies in the yard. The deers just run through the yard and trip over everything. They miss this stuff, but they grab all the light cords and they tear them apart, break them, cut them, snip them. Rabbits, they just get caught in stuff. When we used to have the inflatables, other than thievery, the biggest problem I had with the inflatables was the rabbits would crawl inside of them while they were on because it was warm.
Wow.
And then they would deflate.
Right.
And then they can't get out. So they chew their way out.
Oh, no.
So it's like, why won't this go up? And I look at it, and I had a teddy bear with a huge hole in its belly. It's like, thank God I could put a patch over it. No one would notice because it was a teddy bear. But I'm like, or a snowman, the Grinch, who wouldn't stand up anymore because he had a hole in his side. You know, and then there's the driveway. I never could figure out why my father would never put in a straight driveway. Why if all people have to have a driveway that goes this way. Because no one can back down in a new car. That's the other reason why I had the door open and took the Christmas lights with me, so I could maneuver the driveway. I got a call at 4 in the morning that one of the girls at Landis locked herself out. She didn't have her key. And I said, well, come on up and get mine. And she comes up and gets the key. And I'm going to get in, and I hear her backing down. I hear, I'm like,
Oh, no.
whatever. Next morning, I go out and I walk down, and I had a goose and 2 goslings, which are now smashed to one side. So, unfortunately, they took it in the shorts, and they were just they still worked, but I don't know how good it was. That's about everything in a nutshell. Questions, ideas, thoughts? Yeah.
Does anybody else in the area have a collection like yours or any kind of display similar?
unofficially boast myself as the largest collection of blow molds around. I know there is a gentleman down, and I can't remember the street right now, but he's down in Harleysville area, but sort of like Coltsville, Harleys, down that way, who has a larger display, but not as many. It's more the modern stuff.
Okay.
And I am pretty sure there's no one around that has as many blow molds as I do.
So do you do it yourself?
What's that?
Creamery,
Yeah,
Well, 13.
well,
it's off of Morewood.
it's on Allen, you turn onto it off Allentown Road, go to the Turnpike Bridge, and it's on the
I'm
road.
not familiar.
But if I go home from my son's house, I'm here, I go to your house at Christmas, then I go down that way, I go to the Creamery, and then there's another one there. They're very secluded.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of cars on that road, but
And that's what I have to
they
be worried
put the
about.
whole yard.
The circle next year, if they close the road,
Oh, boy.
am I still going to do it next year?
Well, I don't think it's
Yeah.
as
Of
big
course
as
you will.
yours. It's not as big of a display as what you have,
Yeah.
but they have pretty much anyway.
So
Yeah.
question, now when you look at your display from the house, is it symmetrical?
As in,
Well, you know, everything evenly spaced and you know what I mean?
well,
According to like grid work or something so that it's like, I don't know.
space-wise, everything is 5 foot apart. That's the best I can say. Everything is 5 foot apart. There's aisleways that are
okay.
5 foot. Everything, with the most part, like the Christmas Village display, because I've got all the little elves and all the little animals and stuff like that. They're random. When you look at the display pieces running in rows going across,
Yeah.
it just becomes like, how many Santa Clauses can you look at? They're all 5. They are 5 foot from each other this way and 5 foot from each other
And
this
do you
way.
like have a grid work that you lay out that you know where they are? Like all year round, you know exactly where things
Every
are
year
going?
they go sort of someplace
So you have
different.
to measure it out every time?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
You do it yourself.
My brother helps with the schlepping and the pulling and the carrying and stuff like that, but his health isn't that great. Brian Davis from down at the corner comes up and helps with some of this stuff. He'll wind up my extension cords from last year, which I haven't done this year yet.
Yeah,
And there's 2,000 of them.
Wow.
And last year he wound them up the wrong way. So as stupid as it sounds, there is a method to winding up the extension cords where you wind them in a figure 8 so that they come apart straight.
Right.
You wound them in a circle, so when you come apart, they're like a spring. Because you're doing this in the cold. So now you've got
Right.
2,000 extension cords that are springy.
Exactly.
And, yeah, so you work with them.
Accidentally make
It's-
knots or something like that.
Yeah, which is complicated by the fact that if they're that cold that they're springy, that means your fingers are that cold to work with them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it gets to be a little bit of a challenge at times. But everything is wired up. There are 12 designated circuits for the display.
I was going to say
Yeah.
you have a special feed for,
Yeah, my next plan is to get a separate line put in for them.
for that. Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, but there's 12 designated lines, and then there's 3 household lines, that the front porch, the back porch, and the side porch, which, you know, they're little things. There are lights around the doors, lights around the windows, so that's nominal. But when Mom's health started getting so bad, I stopped doing the inside of the house, which freaked me out before electricity outside of the house. But it has its moments. It has some fun. You know, it gets crazy and it gets annoying, but actually,
I have a question that's been bothering me. I was a baker too.
Okay.
You know, crazy hours at night, and you try to get your sleep.
uh-huh.
So, how do you get all this setting up of everything for Christmas for everybody to enjoy, and then be rested enough to go to work and do all the baking?
We're contemplating that this year because I was so used to it before. Now this year, getting to work is a big challenge because of the stroke, and I'm trying to figure out how it's all going to work out. But
So you haven't retired yet.
oh no, I would love to, but I haven't retired yet. But I'm working on those ideas of like, am I going to get it done in the time frame I want it done? And there is a time frame for it. I start the day after Halloween, and then I will set up until usually the weekend of right after Thanksgiving, and that's when I'll turn them on. Last 2 years, it's ended up being the weekend after, which falls in line with the township's tree lighting, and it works out better that way. And then, that's usually, what, December 5th, something in that ballpark.
First Sunday.
Yeah, the first Saturday, so somewhere in that ballpark. Then, until the 15th, I will add stuff. And if it's not out, if it's not up, it isn't done by the 15th, it ain't going to see the light of day this year, which is a joke because I still try to put it out. But, so I stick to those parameters as for the display setup. Now working and the lights thereof, we'll see how it works out this year. It's going to be a new game. And I'm looking for some extra volunteers to help within the family to come down and help. The setup is all in my brain. Luckily, that's untouched.
You have to get your REM sleep.
What's that?
You have to get your REM sleep.
I know. And the last couple of years, as Mom's health has deteriorated, that's gotten harder and harder and harder. And we'll get it there. I know I'll get it in somehow, even if I end up...
Bring it back a little bit. It's okay to take care of you.
Yeah, I know. Everyone says, don't make it so big. Don't make it so grand. It's like...
This is 1 year.
Yeah. And I did that with my vacation this year, because next year's the big vacation. It'll be year 50 at the vacation spot. And they said, if you're going to take a year off, take off this year, because next year's going to be the big year. It's like, I'm thinking, well, if they're doing the circle next year might be my easy year.
Right.
But we'll see how it goes. But I do plan on making it as much as I can, as well as I can. So I have no intention of putting myself in the situation I was earlier this year.
Good news.
Yeah. And that's where the problem is. And I'll hear it from all the doctors again. But I'm feeling pretty confident in it, because I've gotten it down to such a streamlined effect that I'm the only one that ever notices it's done.
I know how difficult all that baking can be.
What's that?
I know how difficult all that
Yeah.
baking can be.
Yeah.
When it is.
So we'll make it happen. But I thank you for worrying about it, though, because it surprises me how many people will say, "Don't worry, don't make it as big as you did last year." or the
They
year
have to
before."
have a spouse not that.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know. And then it's always, it's a never-ending story. Did you have one?
Yeah, how many years were you doing that?
Doing what?
Setting up your lights.
We started when I was a kid. My father used to put out lights. Early to mid 70s. My brother had a friend who worked at Daniel's Lawn and Garden Center, and he came back with all their display Christmas lights that they had. Years ago, you'd walk into a store and they'd have all the different lights on the wall, flashing and doing all their thing. We called them twinkle lights. Even miniatures, crap like that. We called them twinkle lights. He bought them all home with him and gave them to us. A whole box load of twinkle lights. I'm like, really? So then we started with the lights and more so outside. And then as I got older and my father got a little less grumpy and cynical, I put more of the lights out. And finally, like I said, the early 80s is when I started buying. And then by 2000, we had the whole front of the house side filled and lit. And then I just went crazy from that point. And then I just kept adding. And then I eliminated, like I said, the wireframe stuff, the inflatable stuff, all that stuff that didn't mean Christmas to me. I mean, it was still neat, it was still cool, but it wasn't what I looked at as Christmas. And then I just started confiscating blow molds wherever I could. And I kid you, the Eastport Farmers Market, after Labor Day, everyone was selling them. I can still see my mother sitting in the truck. You needed another one? No, I needed 6 more. So I just kept adding and kept adding. And this year was a little slow. I actually was amazed that last year was so slow, but I couldn't get out because of my health, and I didn't hit the yard sales. I didn't hit the auctions. I didn't get what I wanted to do, so I only added about a dozen pieces this year. So, and then of course I'll wait until after Christmas, and I'll go to Lowe's and Home Depot and see what they have left, and if they have any of the weird stuff left, I can gut it out and turn it into something else, or make one thing or another happen with it.
What's the range of sizes of the things you have? Are there some?
I forgot to bring Tiny Tim along. I have a Tiny Tim piece from the early 70s. He's about this tall.
Okay.
And he's in bad shape. But he'd be the perfect candidate to put inside of a milk bottle and just melt it right around him. But I left him sitting on the... I have a tendency of being a little forgetful on things anymore. The biggest single piece I have are the Empire Santa Clauses. And I have two of them, and they're both from 1958. And they stand at 5.5 foot tall.
Okay.
So he's life size. Most of the other things are in this range, in that height. Some a little taller, some a little rounder, some a little bit squattier. But most everything, they did them in, oddly enough, 24, 36, 42 inch sizes when they made them. So you could get this Santa Claus in 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot size.
Well, how much do those things weigh?
They're relatively light. They're, you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a miracle they don't blow around more.
Well, that's it. When people would fill them with sand and stones and stuff like that, and I've had stuff where I plug it in and it's not lit from here down because it's full of sand.
Oh.
But I just drill a big hole in the bottom of it, dump it all out, pull whatever's out in it. I found, like I said, batteries. I found cinder blocks, cement blocks, bricks, stones, fish gravel. You name it. It's however they could hold it down. And it's nice to, well, I had the driveway done, but I used to go through the back patch of the driveway and there'd be a pile of sand, a pile of blue and yellow fish tank stones. You know? There'd be all types of different things. It's like, I remember where they come from. But, yeah, it does, I hate those cheeks and those lips.
I'm with you on that. Yeah.
I gotta stop watching that.
Does any winter storm stand out in your mind in terms of the effects that it had upon your display?
The worst winter storm we had was an ice storm where it coats everything in ice. And then, of course, you being an idiot and going out and going like this and trying to break the ice off of it and then putting spider cracks all over everything was the second worst part of it. But as for winter storms, I think it really looks cool when it snows.
Like if they're under the snow or
If
something.
they're under the snow.
Yeah, I think that's cool
you know.
too.
Of course, I sit here listening to different electrical wires.
Oh no.
But there's not been a winter. I'm trying to think. It was 2003 or 2004 when we finally decided to go into the other side of the yard. We had a lot of wind, and I had an archway between the sides and the driveway, and that was before I was putting stuff down the way I am now. And that was when I was finding candle lanterns down the street. The archway blew away. That was down in Davis's yard. But the wind, like I said, is usually the worst culprit. And we'll always have a bad storm, probably the last week in November. We'll always have a windstorm and a rainstorm. And once I get through that, I'm fine. And I pray for an early freeze, because if everything freezes into the ground, into a spot, I'm happy, because it ain't going anywhere.
That makes sense.
Yes?
How much is your December electric bill?
Well, it accumulatively, because it splits the way they run it,
Right.
but December usually runs between, I'm going to say, $450 and $650.
Wow. And that's even with the LED lights?
That's even with, because of the quantity change of adding more LEDs in. It's usually in that $500 to $600 range.
Wow.
I should get a postcard from Pico every year. But,
You should.
is there something wrong? You're not lit up.
Yeah, right. That's funny.
Have you ever felt like Chevy Chase?
Yes, I have. There are times, and I if I could kick myself, I would. I'll be out in the front yard, and I'll be wiring in the rain.
Yeah.
What are you doing? There are two things that don't work here well together, and that's electricity and water.
Right.
But you find out where all the problems are.
Yeah.
Because that's usually, part of breaking everything out is we go through everything. Everything comes out of the shed. Everything gets plugged in, first of all. Whether we check the wires or not, they get plugged in. If they don't work, they hit one pile. If they're in bad shape, we don't even bother with them. They go to another pile. If they light up, they go to another pile. The ones that light up, we then check all the cords, make sure that there's nothing frayed, because we do have a lot of problems with the rabbits nipping at them.
Right.
So there could be just like little, and usually you find that out by doing this when it's plugged in.
Oh, no.
But then we go through and we repair all that, replace all that. Then we go to the ones that need more attention, and then we double check their cords. And then we lay out, there's 12 main lines, supply lines that go from the fuse box to the thing. Everything's on one big timer. So 90% of it, you're in the basement. It sounds like literally someone threw a switch because the timer goes ka-lunk, and then it goes ka-lunk off again. 5:45 it goes on, 10:30 it goes off. And the little dial out, the meter stops. They don't have dials and meters anymore.
No, I guess they don't. They're digital.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Did you paint that? Oh, sorry. I had two questions.
Sure.
Okay, the first one is, do you have any heartwarming story of like somebody stopping and nobody ever comes up or sees? Or
Well,
sees
there are a lot of stories like that. There are tons of stories like that. Up until my knee went so bad, which was, my knee surgery was 2019. So up until about 2018, I would stand down at the end of the driveway on Christmas Eve dressed as Santa Claus, handing out little scroll works of, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus, and candy canes.
Yeah.
And we would get the crowd coming from Old Gosh and Hoppin', and there were times, and I kid you not, I'd be standing at that driveway, and there'd be cars backed all the way up to the firehouse and all the way down to the intersection just to come by to see Santa Claus.
Aww.
Or there'd be people flying by and realize, and they turn around and Raymer's driveway, or they turn around the firehouse driveway just to come down and get a look. So
That's cool.
that was always a main thing with it. But when it got too cold, when my knee got to a point where it was too cold to stand outside, I couldn't do it anymore. Which falls hand in hand with that same year, I did not want to do the display. I wasn't going to do the display at all. And my knee was sore, I was tired, I was cranky, I was putting stuff out. And I literally was dragging my knees, putting stuff out. And some woman stopped me. I was going to wrap up the final bits of this, but I'm going to tell this one now. And this was the worst, nicest story I had. Worst one because I have to keep doing it now. The nicest one. She stopped me at Landis and she said, I saw you out there. I said, do you know that guy out there? It's like, yeah, I know that guy. It's me. I'm Crazy Christmas Light Guy. She goes, I have 3 sons. And it was not Christmas unless we drove by this house to look at these lights. Mm-hmm. And she said, the last one of them is in the military now. And it's still not Christmas until I drive by and take pictures of these lights and send it to them. And I'm like, now I got it.
Oh, man. Yeah.
And it was like,
really touching.
yeah. And it was just like, now I'm all over the world practically. And, it's like, and it does. It's nice to think that somehow what you're doing is going to involve a family tradition or someone's day or, if I heard every year I'll hear the same, I used to have one of them. Or I said before, it's like everyone's Christmas idea are these old glow molds. Mm-hmm. And it's so many times. And I've had people stop by and leave boxes of candy. I put a mailbox out for letters to Santa and people leave cards in there. They'll leave boxes of candy in there. One year there was a card with $50 in it on the front door. So it's an ongoing thing. And unfortunately it's one of those situations that it doesn't happen as much anymore just because people don't go out of their way that much anymore, what's going on. And I was going to wrap this up with the idea of this time of year, 50 years ago, we used to go out Halloweening. We used to go up and turn around at the post office. And we made sure we hit the bar because all the guys were in there and they'd give you nickels, dimes, and quarters. It's better than candy. And every year as we got older, we would walk a little further, all the way up to Vauxhall. And I think, in the same way, we'd get kids from all over. We'd have hundreds of kids come for Halloween. We don't get kids anymore. And you probably don't know it or not, but the last traffic street light is right out the door here. There's no more going down that way. There's no sidewalk. I'm going to deviate this story one more time. We had this huge sidewalk chalk for sale, this huge display of sidewalk chalk at the store. Mm-hmm. And I said to one of the guys, I said, now stand here, look this way, and look at Upper Salford. And I said, do you see any sidewalks? Right. Why do you need sidewalk chalk? But anyway, the point of the matter is there's no sidewalks, so no one goes out anymore. No one goes trick-or-treating. But you know what? I used to do a Halloween display, not quite as grand, and I figured, why bother with the Halloween display? They know where to go for the Christmas lights. Right. And the amount of people that go by there, and buses from the Birches, from Peter Becker, from so many places come by, and that's all they do is they take their outing and they go, hit the newspapers. I should have bought some of the old newspaper articles along from when I was a kid, way back when. And like I said, I was there figuring, how do I do this? And it's like, now I think of all the things I could have done. And it's like, I should have bought the newspaper clippings along. So the newspapers don't get out as much as they used to. But we're still in a lot of where to go to see the lights thing. So it still makes someone's year, or it's part of someone's year, or it's like part of their light traveling.
Right. Well, the second question is, what's one piece that you're still looking for, or that you hope to find?
One piece that I'm hoping to find, and I got one of them last year, but there's 3 different types, are Father Christmas. They are the Santa Claus in the long robes, that look like Father Christmas as opposed to Santa Claus. And I got one of them, and there's 3 more. I got a green one last year. It was basically, they were different countries. Right. And that's one piece for sure that I want. The only other thing that I'd love to have was Polaron, back in the late 50s, made a Santa Claus that was leaning on a chimney, and he went like this. And he had a mechanism in him. Yeah. And he either was waving or he had a lantern, and he would go like this. Mm-hmm. And they also made a snowman that would go like this. Oh, wow. That's neat. They're hard to find. They are out there. The motors cost way more than the actual piece does anymore, but they're still out there. And I can still remember, if you drive down 202, heading out of Center Square, where the Turnpike Bridge is, there used to be an old Italian barber shop there. And he used to have it sitting along 202, chained to a rock. And I was like, And I don't know if he died or what became of it, but it disappeared. And it's like, I often wonder who the lucky rooster was that got that. Because those are my holy grails right now. Anyone else?
Did you grow up in Upper South?
I have lived in that house since it's been built. It'll be 59 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I was born January 23rd of 64, and they moved in shortly after that.
Wow.
So
you're still a youngster yet.
Yeah, I plan on. They'll probably find me. They'll probably be propping me up as part of the Christmas display.
There you go.
I'll probably be one of the displays. That's why I got to figure out how to create a fund that it can be taken care of at infinitum.
That's cool.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
That was wonderful.
I totally deviated off of what I wrote, but